Thank you. Well, good afternoon or morning. Hello, everyone from Renew Your Spirit. I'm Reverend Lynn Gaffin, and today I am with you. I have with me Julianne Johnson. She is from Mystic, Connecticut, and this is really interesting. I've been wanting to talk to her about this anyway. She's has been a student of astrology since in the 80s. She's currently president of the Astrological Society of Connecticut and is active in coordinating their 9-month lecture program and teaching astrology. She's available for chart readings, astrology parties, and she incorporates astrology into tarot readings. Did I miss anything?
That's about it. I think that encompasses it all.
I think I copied this right off of the page, so I guess that's pretty good. So Julianne, welcome. It's so nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
I'm so glad we finally got together. We've been working on this for a while, and we finally got
Yes. I think everything got put on hold last year, of course.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I'm looking forward to doing more astrology out in the world.
Good. Do you have a webpage?
I don't.
You should.
Something should be done. Yes.
Yeah. So I want to find out how you got started in astrology and how you learned it.
Well, okay. First of all, let me just let you know that astrology is one of those things that you keep learning all your life because there are many brands, there are many disciplines, and it's quite an esoteric study. And so I was always curious from even high school days, just the whole talk of the age of Aquarius and seeing my sun sign on things. So I just was curious about it, I would say. And I liked the style of it. Let's put it that way. So I didn't really start studying it. I dabbled a little bit while I was in college, but I was always a very active person. I have a Sagittarius moon, so that makes me very, very lively and energetic kind of person who always wants to be on the move. So
I'll take your word.
I didn't buckle down to studying it. Well, if anyone's a Sagittarius, they'll know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So everyone has a sun sign and a moon sign. But I started in the late 80s. I had moved back to the area and I just happened upon, of course, one of those wonderful coincidences of synchronicity of the universe. I happened upon a meeting while I was stopped to use a restroom at a local hotel. And in the lobby, there were people milling about having a talk before their meeting. And I went in to use the restrooms. When I come back, the whole lobby was empty, except for one woman at a book table. So I just stopped by and looked, and I was thrilled by some of the titles. And so I started then, kind of on a more serious study instead of just dabbling into it. And it takes a few years, really, it's like learning a new language. You know, you walk around with your book, your translation books, and you're stumbling on phrases and sentences, and then finally it starts making sense, and finally you start automatically recognizing things. And so that can take a few years, depending, I guess, on how diligent you are. But it took a few years till I felt like I was ready to really give readings to people. And of course, then it was very, very having to run back to the books and check on what I was saying and what I was deciding about what I was seeing.
Wow.
So it's a beautiful study. Like I said, there's very many layers to it.
I know.
You know, we say that. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I know everybody checks the newspaper for their horoscope. You know, they're always
Oh,
checking
yes.
that. And I've
And
I've filled out several things
yeah,
online that were supposed to tell me about, you know, what it is and that. And I get confused at reading what the
sure,
explanation is. So I don't read it all.
sure. Well, first of all, it's difficult. The sun sign columns, that's what they call those, because they're just based on the sun sign. That's what we all are familiar with in general. Our sun sign is Leo, or our sun sign is Taurus, or that's our sun sign when we were born.
Mhm.
But what we don't realize is that every one of the planets has a different sign, and they all fall into our astrology chart. So we say that children don't come with directions, but guess what? They really do. And an astrology chart will show you many, many, many things about somebody. Um, it will show talents and difficulties. It will show how you like to do things, how well you communicate, whether you like to be around people or not, whether just many, 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 many things that your
Hmm.
chart will tell you. So definitely people come with directions.
Yeah, I guess they do. I know I was speaking with a mutual friend of ours, and who is generally a skeptic, and he
Uh-huh.
said you read for him, and he said he was amazed that
Oh,
that you know, he said you were so right on
oh,
about
that's great.
everything, and he's a skeptic. He doesn't believe unless you can see it, you know.
Uh-huh.
And so I thought, okay, I got to get a hold of her and see. Yeah.
Well, like I said, it's a very esoteric study, astrology. It has a mundane side and it has a very deep spiritual side. Um, so, for instance, your birth chart is the measurement of time, placement, and angle of all the energies of all the planets at the moment you first took your first breath on this planet. So that's why it's very important to have your time of birth for your chart. You Astrologers can do a chart for the day of your birth,
Right.
and they can delve into your life with you and find the actual time of your birth for you with a whole bunch of research.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but um, that moment of birth, that moment when we first come into life, and the babies will be born whenever they want.
Right.
They will not, you know, and
Yeah.
they're going to come when they want. And even when they're prepared births, and we say, well, that's the time that soul said, okay, I'll be born.
Right. Yeah.
The family's charts are reinforced in the person's chart. You'll have things in common with your mother, your father, your siblings. There's a web that's woven between families with the astrology. It's very interesting.
So where I've always wondered, I'm right on the cusp. I mean,
Oh,
my
okay.
birthday is April 20th,
Okay.
and I was born at 12:20 in the morning.
Okay.
So I'm right there,
Uh-huh.
you know. And I
So,
never know if I'm Aries or a Taurus. It just depends on who I read. Each one is different.
well, you know what? when when the computer calculates your chart, it will tell you how many minutes away from being a Taurus, or how many minutes past being an Aries you are, or how many minutes from being a Taurus.
Hmm.
So we'd have to look specifically, but when someone's born on the cusp like that, they share both signs a little bit.
I'm wondering
Their
about that.
soul is leaving the last sign, but it's still saying, you know what, I'm still going to use some of those tools. I'm still going to reach towards some of that stuff that I'm learning in this
Mhm.
lifetime. Um, it's going into the next sign. So the signs are all an evolution of energy. Metaphorically, you could say that all of the 12 signs of the zodiac are um, the soul starting off. With Aries is the seed of a new start. Taurus rules physical being, so that's like birth onto the planet.
Mhm.
You know? Gemini is how do you learn to communicate. So it evolves all through the 12 signs, and our astrology includes all those 12 signs. All those 12 signs of the zodiac fall somewhere in our astrology,
Oh, okay.
in our personal chart.
Yeah.
Now, you may have a concentration all in a few signs, or you may have a concentration of your 10 planets that I mentioned before. You might have a concentration of them splayed out all over the chart. If you remember, maybe recently last year we had a conjunction. What that means is a meeting of the planets all at the same place in the sky. And we had what was really a super conjunction. We had about 7 planets all in one sign.
Right, I remember that, yeah.
Last January, and that was the beginning of. There's some very very wonderful astrology about knowing what was going on with the pandemic. The astrologers for years have knowing that this energy was coming, this huge change energy was coming, this huge death of the old, because of the transits. And we have all been very curious to see how it was going to happen. And we see, of course, the planets are involved. They are planets that represent growth, death, transformation, rebuilding, optimism versus the opposite.
Right.
And those planets have all been together. They are slow moving outer planets, so they take a long time to move in the sky. And when they're all together, it's very rare. That some of those conjunctions haven't happened for 500 years to 2,000 years. So we're talking about things that really don't happen very often, these energies that we measure. So then we take those measured energies and we bring them to a personal level when we look at a personal birth chart. So, for instance, Pluto is a planet of transformational change. It rules the dark side versus the light.
Oh,
And so everyone has it somewhere in their chart,
yeah.
whether it's dominant or not. You would find that people, I'll say that people that are in spiritual work will often have Pluto in certain places in their chart. For instance, in the 12th house, which is the house of psychic energy, which is the house of delving into our belief systems. So, like I said, there's a lot of esoteric work you can do with astrology to see what is your purpose here. What is the path that I'm supposed to follow?
Wow.
And it's really, we came with some directions. If we would just, unfortunately,
Just read them, yeah.
Unfortunately, the past couple thousand years has been the age of Pisces. Now, Pisces rules the search for spiritual truth. It rules the search for spiritual meaning. And you can see what's happened in the world in the past 2,000 years. We've had a lot of searching for spirituality.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're slowly moving into the age of Aquarius because these ages last about 2,500 years.
Oh, okay.
And if we look at cultures on our planet, we will see that a culture comes into power and lasts about 2,000 years. And then it dies out, it gets conquered or changed by another culture that comes in and shifts. And so there's some very interesting anthropological astrology you could do. So for instance, the Egyptians were in power during the age of Taurus. Now their symbol of Egypt is the bull's horns with the sun in between it. That's astrology right there. Okay.
Yeah.
And they worship the bull. And they sacrifice the bull. And they're still kind of stuck in that bull. In fact, India probably made the cow sacred at the same time of its era of development. So you're talking thousands and thousands of years ago.
Right.
Each age lasts a couple thousand years. So it's very interesting, astrology. It's really very fascinating.
Now, it's been around for how long? Ages and ages. I mean,
well, the oldest records that they can find are about 6,000 years old.
Really?
Yeah, ancient Sumerian and Babylonian times. Let's see, which came first? I think the Sumerians came first.
Yeah.
I get them mixed up. Sorry.
Yeah, I know.
And then of course there's Chinese astrology,
Yes.
which is just based on the moon. So
Mhm.
they have 13 signs because there are 13 full moons in a year. Ours is based on the sun. All right, the 365 days of the year.
Mhm.
And they divide that up into 12. So that's how we get the 12 signs of the zodiac. The zodiac is simply the path of the sun as it goes through the sky and the constellations that are behind it in the sky. We have fixed constellations that always stay the same, like the Big Dipper,
Yeah.
right? It's always there. It moves around in the sky a little bit. It rotates a little because we're moving.
Right.
But there are constellations that are farther out, that they're so far away that because they never move for us. They're always in the same place. So those are fixed star constellations. There's a whole branch of astrology that deals with fixed stars. It's very fascinating.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's some really wonderful things you can do. So you can learn level upon level of your own self. You can learn about the dynamics of your relationships with other people. You can learn about your children. You can learn how to guide them. Politics has its own astrology, which is very, very fascinating.
I bet.
For instance, when George Bush signed the war that we're just getting out of in Afghanistan, okay, the astrologers, they always have a lot of mundane lectures. Mundane means worldly. So some astrologers concentrate on that, and they do political astrology, and we look at what's going on in the world.
Right.
And I remember going to a lecture that year, and George Bush had just signed the war declaration to go to war. Guess what? On the very last day of Pisces, okay, during the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that happens only every 20 years. So the astrologer was giving this lecture and said, can you believe it? He didn't wait till the next day. The next day is 1 degree of Aries, the war god. He signed the paperwork when we were in Pisces, the sign of victims and martyrdom and religions. Okay, so he signed the paperwork on that day instead of waiting one more day. Now, if he was Ronald Reagan, his astrologer would have said, "Do not sign that day." He would have signed the next day, and we would have been in and out of that country quickly.
Oh my gosh.
The astrologer said this will not be resolved or change will not happen until the next Jupiter-Saturn cycle in 20 years. And guess what? We just had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
So, and now
Oh my gosh.
it's changing. So it's really, there's a lot. Of course, there's lots of speculation because people have free will.
Yeah.
So you can say, okay, the energy is here. This is the energy. It's the energy of change, or it's the energy of growth, and you can give exact timing to people, but you can't say how they're going to use that energy.
Now, with you say it's spiritual also. I know you are a spiritualist. I know you go to the New London Spiritualist Church.
Yeah.
Now, did this come along? Did the church spiritualism come along before or after the astrology?
Well, you know what? I think most astrologers, a lot of them, if they knew about spiritualism as a religion, they would probably join. Many, because I never knew there was a religion. Okay. For instance, I was living out on the West Coast, and I had some friends down in California, and I went to visit them, and they took me to see Sophia Brown, the psychic who had
Sylvia
started.
Brown.
I'm sorry, Sylvia Brown.
Sylvia Brown, yeah.
Sylvia Brown. So I went with them quite a few times to see her, and it really opened my mind, and I started delving into things like the science of mind and just being curious about that kind of stuff. I knew since I was a child that what they were teaching me in Catholic school, ever since second grade, I knew. I remember the priest sitting in front of the class. He came over once a week to do our catechism class from the church next door. And he was talking about something. And I remember in my mind saying, that is not right. What are you saying? That's not true. And it blew my faith right there in the Catholic,
Oh,
system
wow.
and all that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I went to Catholic school since till 12th grade. So I was, and luckily I was in a liberal Catholic school that did not shove the religion down your throat. It was very liberal. We learned a lot about world religions. I went to a high school in Middletown that's an all-girls Catholic high school. Very good school, excellent education. But spiritualism I didn't discover till much later, only a few years ago, because for a while, I'll say, after I came back, this would have been in the mid 80s when I came back from visiting my friends in California. I had gone to a psychic there who told me that in a past life, I was Colonel Alcott, who was the assistant to the Theosophical Society leader.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Yeah,
I can't think of her name at the moment.
Yeah, I can't either.
And so I was like, wow. So I just thought this is very interesting. And I got a few of the books about Theosophy, which is a very fascinating group.
Madame Blavatsky?
Yes, sorry, Madame Blavatsky. Yes.
It
So
came into my mind.
thank you. Yeah, this woman said, hey, in one of your last lives, you were this guy, Colonel Alcott. He was like best friends with Madame Blavatsky, and they started the spiritualism move, or the movement of the Theosophical Society, which I think was very related to spiritualism.
Right.
She was more into collecting knowledge, I think, and trying to weave it all together, right? Which is kind of difficult, but it's all one basic truth,
Yeah.
of course. So that started me being very, very interested in looking at the more spiritual, level. And I was still always interested in astrology. So I started with the astrology, and I don't know why, but a friend of mine who I met the first year I moved to this part of the state, where I've been now for 30 years, she is an active member in the spiritualist church. And about 3 years ago, she said to me, hey, Julianne, there's the spiritualist church that you might like down at Pine Grove. And I was like, oh, I never heard of it. So I went, and they're bang. I said, oh, good. This is the kind of people I like,
Yeah.
I relate to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been about 4 years now. 3 years.
Okay, so then you found the New London Church, and you just kind of went from there. Yeah.
Well, they were
That's
meeting
right, because the New London Church was meeting down there at the
they
time.
meet at Pine Grove.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
In the
Yeah.
summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
So you kind of found a home?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
They're my kind of people.
Yeah.
Definitely. I've brought a lot of people too.
Good.
I'm a very big networker.
Mm-hmm.
So I blah 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 blah.
That's
And
great.
At my astrology groups, I really encourage, because most people that do astrology, I'd say, I can't say everybody, but they are esoterically interested people. They are people who are searching for more meaning in life. I think some people get in as a curiosity because, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah.
Then they realize how deep it can go. For instance, there's something in your chart that's it's imaginary space where the moon's orbit intersects the Earth's orbit, right? These orbital spaces are called nodes, N-O-D-E, nodes. And the node of the moon, I don't know, I know, or I should say that many people esoterically, I guess, believe that when souls come into this planet, that they kind of spiral down into the electrical field of the
Okay.
planet at the poles. So this node of the moon is said to represent that the energy your soul is coming into this life with to use as tools for your growth. And the north node is the energy you're working to become in this lifetime. Vedic astrology, the Indian astrology uses these very strongly, the nodes of the moon.
Oh.
Rahu and Ketu, they're called. So it's like the beginning and end of our soul's journey. It's interesting.
Now, what do you have a family? I mean, what do they think of this?
Well, it's sad. My mom was old-fashioned. I'd say I was born when she was 40. She was raised in a strict Catholic household, Irish Catholic. I remember my mom's sister once telling me a story about them all sitting around at the kitchen table, and one of their cousins was expecting a baby, and they'd been married for a while, and they were, hoping and hoping and hoping and hoping. And my aunt said in front of my grandmother, "Oh, so-and-so's pregnant." And this would have been about 1945. And my grandmother nearly flipped and went through the roof because she said that word.
Oh, pregnant. Yeah.
Yeah, she said, "Do not say that word in public," or it's just like,
yeah.
Whoa! So
Yeah.
my mom, it's sad because my mom was a very learned person and was really open-minded about everything but that.
Really?
She didn't want to hear about it. When I first started, in fact, that probably delayed me quite a bit in studying astrology, to know that my mother disapproved of it so much.
Oh.
I had to kind of just not talk about it. And, so it's too bad. I'm from a big family. And to tell you the truth, I haven't really worked with their astrology too much. A couple
So
sisters I'm closer with.
None of them
they're not
are
interested.
open to it? No?
Yeah,
That's too
well,
bad.
astrology is what they call Uranian science. It's ruled by the planet Uranus, which rules the sign of Aquarius. And Aquarius rules independence, freedom, individuality. It's a paradoxical sign because it also rules groups. So in essence, it rules your individual responsibility to the collective. Right? So but when you have a strong Uranus or Aquarian signature in your astrology chart, you tend to be weird. You tend to be off the wall, nor abnormal, just like, you got to be different. You got to be, I remember when I was like, just being a teenager, 12, 13, 14, I remember I saved my money and I bought the brightest color. Everybody was wearing chino pants. It was the new thing, but they were usually khaki or blue.
Yeah.
That was it. Well, I found them in bright pink, lime green, okay, and orange, and I wore those. So, that's what I mean about, you got to fly your own flag. Right?
Yeah.
You have a strong Aquarius nature. And so astrology rules that. And so when people that tend to veer towards astrology tend to think outside the box, they tend to be people that are eclectic, considered a little weird, maybe odd, very into analyzing things.
How long does it take you to do a chart?
Well, let me tell you, you could do days.
Oh, okay.
But a basic chart reading, I tell people, be prepared to be an hour and a half for just a very basic chart reading. Because what we do is we look at the big hitters in the chart, we call that the sun sign, the moon sign, and what's called the ascendant sign, which is what was rising on the horizon that moment you took your first breath.
Oh.
And that is almost like having another sun sign. Like, you kind of have two sun signs, you're that Aries, Taurus. You know, you sort of get two right away, you know. But if we found your ascendant sign, that would give you another very strong energy in your chart that's very similar to your sun sign. They say that the ascendant sign, which it's because it's on that horizon of the chart, it's really what you're willing to show the world. You know, it's like, this is the mask that I wear when I'm in public, okay? And this is why many people don't believe astrology when they read the sun sign columns in the newspapers. And they say that thing is never right, okay? Well, their sun sign might be in a placement where it's very hidden, and their ascendant might be the one they should be looking at. You know, their ascendant sign would be the one, because that's the one they would be relating to in public, or, you know, on a public level. And then, of course, your moon sign is that rules your emotional makeup. So it rules your needs and says, what do I need in this life? And how moody am I going to be? No, you could be moon sign in Gemini. It means you change your mind all the time. Your moods change, like, oh, whatever. You get over it really quickly. Or you could have your moon sign in Pisces, which is much more feeling and very compassionate and caring, and could get suckered into, you know, being a little too compassionate. So
now with people changing, I mean, people change all the time. I know I'm not the same person I was, and you know, and continue to grow in that. So how does that apply to, you know,
that's a great question. That's a great question, because your natal chart, what we call your natal birth chart, that always stays the same. So your personality traits, they're always going to be there, whether you've learned to modify them or not. Okay. Someone who has a selfish trait, they're always going to have a selfishness that they either have to learn to get over, you know, or recognize themselves so that they can stay balanced, you know, with other people in the world. So your basic birth chart will always stay there with you. But because life, you know, time goes by, there are several techniques that we use to measure the passage of time in your astrology chart. There's something called progression, a progressed chart. And what we do is, well, there's mathematical things that you do to the chart to move it forward in time. And those will show what energies are changing for you, what energies might be getting triggered that may have not been used before. For instance, okay, the moon sign, that in progression changes every 2 years. Okay, so think about your life about 2.5 years. Okay, so when you think back in things that you got interested in as a hobby, or something that was fun for a little while, when you look back at your life, if you were to look at your progressed moon and what sign it was in, okay, you would see, oh, for 2 years, I was really interested in cooking. I took these cooking classes. I bought a walk, you know, I was doing this and that. And then, okay, I felt I had enough and I moved on to something else. Your progressed moon was very likely in the sign of Cancer, which rules food and cooking and nurturing and feeding people, right? So your progressed moon changes about every 2.5 years. It changes into the next sign. And so there's a little progression of interests, you could say, for your whole lifetime. And you can look back and say, oh, you know, I was very artistic at that time of my life, or I was very, you know, I was a bookworm for 2 years. I couldn't get my nose out of books, or, you know, or I was very sociable for 2 years, you know. So it's, that is what's called the progressed moon. So there's different kinds of progressions that we use. The progressed, sorry, there's a phone going off here. There's a progressed moon when it changes signs too. That's usually a kind of intense time. and it takes, you know, a few days to really shift. And so at that point, you could be like set adrift for a little while. Oh,
Mhm,
or
mhm.
or find yourself disillusioned all of a sudden or something. And so there's, and of course, then astrology measures the sky every day. Okay. So you can have your chart and you measure the planetary transits, we call them, which means the planet moving, like a bus transit of a, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
vehicle. It transits, the planets are
Mhm.
transiting through the sky. Last summer, did you get to look at the sky when Jupiter and Saturn were very bright in the sky?
Mhm, I heard about it, yeah.
Yeah, it was in the news, everything. I was like, yay, they're showing
Yeah.
people a conjunction, yay. And so it was pretty neat. And if you were an astrologer, you knew that Pluto was also with them, but it's not visible to the naked eye. And if you had
Oh,
had a telescope, you could have seen 3 planets all
oh,
together in the sky.
really? Wow.
And then Jupiter moves faster than Saturn. So if you watched every week, you could see Jupiter moving through the sky and then passing Saturn and then, you know, keeping on going. So it was very great. It was great visual sort of astrology going on right there.
Now, does Neil deGrasse Tyson know about all this?
He's a physicist, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's very hard to get physicists to come down to the ground.
Well, he spends all his time up in the sky.
They're
In the
very
cosmos.
stubborn, you
Yeah.
know. In well, you know, there was a huge separation of religion and science,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, the science really just decided, you know, all this
Mm-hmm.
Earth stuff, forget about it. You know, it's crazy. These, you know, they started killing off all the wise women and you know all
Yeah,
that stuff,
yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah.
so science has a lot to catch up with because the funny thing is, the more they get into quantum physics,
Yeah,
the more they realize they're proving us right.
yeah, yeah. Yes,
Because
they are.
astrology believes that energy is in the ethers.
Mhm.
Each planetary body has its own energy. And we don't know why, but you know, we know now that there's like cosmic soup, you know, out there. It's not just a void,
Right.
that it's really like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, a cosmic soup. And the planets are traveling in these troughs of energy, right? And so the planets are radiating energy back to the sun, all right? The sun's giving out all the energy. Planets are radiating that back, right? We're in the middle of a radiation field. We don't know how it works,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So when we take that first breath on this planet, astrology says that's the important breath. That gives you a map. Wherever the planets are, whatever they're doing with each other is very important. We have, for instance, the each generation gets its name. I'm part of the baby boomer generation. Okay. I'm at the end of it. The next generation was the X generation, I believe. Uh, I don't know. I looked it up one day. They have all these names.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know, and I never can
Yeah.
remember.
Now we're in the Gen X or something. Or no, I think they're calling the Gen X. They're changing things a lot, but that's their job, you see. Our job of our generation, Pluto often shows the job of the generation. Neptune shows the ideals because they're generational planets. They don't change signs for 15 to 20 years. Okay. So, you know, they're in this one sign for a really long time.
Now,
So
what do
I'm in
you
the,
do at an astrology party?
oh, well, um, I usually have the person make sure they have 4 or 5 people, 6 maybe, not too many more, because I'm going to spend about a half an hour with each person. So what they do is they set up a little party. I bring some esoteric things to like play with. Like I have astrology dice where you ask a question and roll the dice, see what happens. I have I Ching. I have some other
Yeah.
divination things that they can kind of sit with and look at and get curious about while I do a reading for them. So it depends on what they want to do. I've designed my own tarot reading because, of course, the divinations are very related to each other, and numerology, astrology. I'd say astrology is the most technical. You know, the others are a little more esoteric. Meaning based.
Mhm.
It seems because astrology is so mathematical. It's so
Right.
precise, very precise. Um, so card reading is wonderful. It's all very visual, of course, and metaphoric, and you learn the meaning of each of the cards, 72 cards. But then when you put them together, you get a story. And I designed mine in an astrology reading. So when someone can come in, they could have a tarot reading that is designed with my astrology, using my astrology. All the cards have an astrological ruler, so you can use that to relate them to different energies. And I find people get a lot out of that usually.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, is this leading in any way toward mediumship, or how does this?
No,
find
no.
that
Well,
readings are
I don't know
different?
if I've ever seen any. I think maybe you do use quite a bit of psychic energy when you're doing a reading for somebody,
Mhm.
because you're looking at a pattern of the chart. The chart is really this pattern on a
Mhm.
paper in a wheel. So it's like a mandala almost.
Mhm.
And right away you can see where it might have one energy in one place or another. Or so when you delve into it, you're really intuiting a lot.
Right.
I think once you get past the technical,
Mhm. Mhm.
once you learn the technical, so you've got it down, like knowing another language, and you
Right.
can switch into the other language and you don't have to think, what are the words? Oh, no, that's what it's like. So you're speaking another language, but you're really getting a lot of input from, I think, from your psychic energy, to be able to blend that and to help the person see how is this energy showing up in their own life,
Mhm.
you know. So
Now, have you ever had anybody done a reading for someone and they rejected it? They didn't believe it?
no, not really.
Really?
There was one woman I had a little trouble with, but she was ill.
Mm.
She was very sick, and she came with a friend to my house, which I at that time I never did readings at my house. I do once in a while, but um, I usually do them at fairs and things like that. But she and her friend were coming to the town. I said, okay, I live in Mystic. If you're there for the day, come by. And when they got there, she was really ill. And I think it was I couldn't connect with her,
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, oh, we can do this again sometime. But
Yeah.
that was too bad. She never called me back. I felt
Right.
bad.
Yeah.
Usually
What?
people are amazed
Mhm.
at what astrology will tell them, and they'll say, oh, you're so good. I say, it's not me. I'm just telling you what this means on this paper.
Yeah.
This is your soul. This is your soul's choice.
Mhm.
That's one thing that astrology teaches is responsibility for your choices.
Yeah.
And I think that's, a really great thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
to,
I know Rich was amazed. He was absolutely
yeah.
amazed.
Yeah,
And
he told me that he was very skeptical at
yeah.
first, and he had heard somebody else talk about something, and he got curious, I think. And then I don't know how we got on the subject, but I told him a couple things, and
Mhm.
or he said something about himself, and I said, "Oh, that's this and that." He was like, "Oh, how did you know that?" And I was like, "Well, that's what it means." So, I'm just telling you what it means. That's all. So, believe me, there's a lot of astrologers that are much better than I am. I don't do it enough. I mean, if I could, if I was a good studier, I mean, I shouldn't say, I don't want to disparage myself. I'm a good astrologer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't do like chart rectification to try and find someone's birth time. I don't do tons of techniques. I do a lot of individual, let's learn about yourself, learn about relationships, you with your partners or, your family. I dabble a little bit in what's called horary astrology, which is asking a question. So if you say, am I going to do this or not? You draw a chart for that moment of the question, and it will answer your question.
Oh, really?
So that's a specialty astrology, so there's quite a few branches, like I said. Well, horary was probably one of the first Western astrologies to be used back in the, I don't want to say Middle Ages, but back in history of Europe, because people didn't have clocks. People would go to an astrologer and say, what's happening?
Yeah.
And the astrologer would say, oh, let me draw up a chart right now. And so they would answer the question. So if you were wealthy, you could have a birth chart. Only kings and royalty usually had birth charts. They say that Alexander, I was going to say Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
They say Alexander the Great was held back from being born. They actually held the mother's legs together because they were waiting for the star Regulus, which rules kings, to rise on the horizon.
Oh my gosh.
And they made her wait like, I don't know, half an hour or something.
Oh dear.
Something like that. I read that once. I was like,
oh
wow.
My gosh.
Boy, oh boy.
Now, don't you think you'd do more readings if you did have a web page?
Yeah, I probably would. I guess sometimes I'm not that organized and I'm too scattered, you see. I do a lot of things. I've been working at a group home for people with mental illness for the past 6 years. I just left that. But my field is recreation, and I've done a lot of work teaching outdoor sports and things like that. I've kind of slipped into, when my mom was elderly, I did a lot of caregiving. I'd go to Florida with her for 5 years and then come back to this part of the country and then scramble to get work and, figure out what I was doing. So I've been a park ranger and a sailing instructor, and a ski teacher, and, a trail leader, and, all kinds of things like that. And I've been a recreation director.
What was your favorite? What was your favorite job?
I think, I was recreation director for a boarding school for high school kids in Alaska.
Really?
And I think that was one of my favorite jobs. If the weather had been better there, I lived on the coast of Alaska where it rains about 320 days a year. No kidding. No kidding. After 2 years, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm a Leo. I need the sun.
Oh my gosh, you have gotten around.
That was a lot.
I think if you put it on your Facebook page that you do this, because I had to go hunting around to find information about you. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I mean,
I hope that did you go on the Astrological Society's website?
That's where I found it. Yeah. That's where I found it. Yeah. But I mean, what I did was I just put in Julianne Johnson astrology in Connecticut, and that's where it came up.
Oh, good.
But if you're, if somebody's on your Facebook page,
yeah, they can find me. Well, it's funny that you asked me that, because I've been getting a lot of messages lately saying, you have a lot of talent you need to share with the world. So you really need to do this. And in fact, I was going to teach a class last summer at Pine Grove. And then COVID happened. So I've just been talking with them about doing that again. So hopefully that will. And, I have something let me tell you, my own chart. I have Saturn, the planet of time, and kind of holding back until you feel really secure. I have that in my career house. Okay. My house of career has Saturn. which makes you go very slowly.
Well, speed it up.
Okay.
Because I agree. I think you've got a lot of talent and you need to put it out there,
Yeah.
you know? And the
Yeah.
thing is, if we don't know we're good, and if we don't think we're good, nobody else is going to.
That's right. Yeah, you're totally right. And I
So,
know I'm good
yeah,
at,
yeah,
astrology,
yeah. So,
and I know that whoever needs what I have to tell them is going to show up to me,
yeah,
you know. And that's sometimes sad to see people that are doing some of these more esoteric things worrying about whether they're going to get have to fight for business or something.
yeah, yeah.
There was a um, there's a shop that used to be here in Mystic, and they wouldn't have any local people do readings for them. They were afraid you would steal their business.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't
Oh my
that sad?
gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very sad.
Oh gee.
Oh well.
Wow.
What can you do?
That's too bad. That's too bad.
Yeah,
Boy, talk about not having faith in yourself.
yeah, right. So,
So,
well,
well, Julianne, this has been really fascinating. And I want you to do my chart and I'll contact you with information on it.
okay, great. That
And
sounds good.
I'd like to find out about me.
Sure. Yeah, we're always, I tell you, there's always something to learn, no matter how much we think we know about ourselves. And you know what? It also validates things
Yeah.
when you go, wow, I didn't, no wonder, So
Yeah.
astrology can do that for people too.
Yeah.
It's really
Oh,
good.
that's great. That's fantastic. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation. I really enjoyed it.
I really did too. I think this is fascinating. I love this kind of stuff. I love finding out about things like this. I mean, I've always known about it on the surface,
Yes.
but I've never gotten really into it and heard anybody
Yeah.
speak about it.
Well, I think I could safely say that any skeptic is a skeptic because they've never had a reading,
Yeah.
and it's sad when I see, and it's a human nature to base our judgments sometimes with
Yeah.
ignorance.
Yeah.
So, with a little bit of enlightenment, we were like, wow, this is really good.
Mhm. And that's one thing about it. You can prove it in black and white with your readings. Where if I'm giving somebody a mediumship reading, they can just sit there and say nope, 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 and be
Yeah.
completely closed off.
Yeah, right. And you might be totally correct the whole time, but they're being like a jerk.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So,
Yeah.
well, this has been great.
Well,
Thank
okay.
you again. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
And we'll
And
see
nice
you this
meeting you.
weekend. Nice
And I'll
meeting
see you on
too.
Saturday.
Yes.
Okay. Take care now. Okay.
Take care, Julianne.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.